Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Conversations with the Career Doctor. This weekly podcast is your destination to build the health of your career, heal those little career ailments that you may have, and strengthen your career fundamentals. So, listen in, be inspired, and take away lots of great ideas and thoughts from our career doctor for this week. I am delighted to be with Dhanya Rajeswaran, who is the Global Vice President and Country Managing Director at Fluence. Dhanya and I go back a really long way. But what's amazing about Dhanya is the fact that from the time I met her about 15 years ago, the energy, intentionality, that absolute desire to do very well in whatever she takes, whatever she sets her heart on, that quality in Danya today, as managing director at Fluence, she still has it in loads. So it's going to be amazing to have this conversation with Danya. And Danya, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Saundarya. And yes, how time flies, 15 years. But when I look back at these 15 years and to see all the beautiful things that you and Avtar have accomplished, I mean, phenomenal. And I believe it's also your 25th year in running. Best wishes for this amazing work.
Thank you so much for those wishes. And, when I look back and when we say 25 years, it seems like a long time. But I can't believe it's like just gone by in like a flash. And I still remember that the first time you and I interacted, you were with Accenture at that time. And we were actually talking about bringing a breakthrough idea into Accenture's working culture, which is flexibility. And today, I mean, you can just see the fact that we live in a world that's hybrid, that's remote, that's completely flexible, and we still want more. We still want more. So I'm going to begin with this question.
Mhm.
Now, you are someone that has, built an incredible career, step by step, brick by brick, on the foundation and fundamentals of learning, of absorbing, and constant growth. Now, what do you think this whole hybrid working and the fact that many of us are not in the same place, we are not together, does that affect learning in any way? Do you think there are pros and cons to this whole thing of working remote? What are your thoughts on that, Danya?
It's interesting because way back, I'm talking 15 years ago, when my first experience with the topic of inclusion and diversity happened. Actually, that was the first time ever in my life that I needed flexibility, right? Like I needed a remote working, I needed to move locations. And it was my very first experience doing a remote role at that point. I'm talking 15 years ago. A remote role where my entire set of stakeholders were in another part of the world. My boss was sitting out of New York. My team members and colleagues were not in India. And mind you, these were the days of conference calls. Like you had to pick up a phone and make a call if you wanted to connect with somebody. And it was not those days of, Teams and video and all of this, right? So, to your question, is it difficult? Incredibly difficult. And it's still incredibly difficult even today because even though we have so much technology, not everyone uses that technology. Not everyone turns on their video when they get on these calls. Not everyone seeks, coffee time out virtually to hang out with colleagues. Because, the moment you're virtual, everything is scheduled. Like you have to schedule every single thing. So even if you have to ask a simple question, but you need to schedule time to ask that simple question, that itself takes a couple of days, right? Because everybody's schedules are so busy. So, to think of a hybrid world, it is important. Why? Because there is life, there is needs that people have. So, a hybrid world is absolutely important, but it has to be hybrid in the sense it has to be a combination of working remotely, but also working together. So if we can figure out that balance, I think that's when progress is really fast. Like in my case, going back 15 years, one of the reasons I was successful in that role was, of course, apart from the fact that it needed a lot of flexibility in my mind to how I might choose to connect with people and get stuff done. But it was also those days when, we could travel. So we would travel, we would meet as a team. So every quarter there would be something or the other where you would, sit down together and connect. So there was a balance. So even though it was like a remote role, there was still a balance of connecting and meeting. You know, we are in a world that needs to have a balance between both.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Beautifully, beautifully said. Now, as the leader of an organization which is in the energy sector, now, very clearly, women's workforce participation in anything other than, say, IT, ITIS, banking, and so on is low. If you take the energy sector, especially in India, the representation is even lesser. But here you are, a unicorn, if I could call you that, at the C suite of an industry which is traditionally, even abroad, actually has a lesser number of women professionals. Now, as the leader of your organization, as the leader, as the managing director of Fluence, what would be the things that you constantly think of which can make this industry a better one for women? What do you think should be those things which, in the companies in that sector, especially old economy companies, what should they do?
Yeah. So I think with the renewable energy industry, right, it's a lot better than the traditional energy sector, right?
Yeah.
So therein already there is a little bit of an advantage for women to enter this place. Why? Because in the renewable energy space, it's not just, being at project sites, it's not just, being on the ground doing things, but many things are enabled by technology today, which means that you're able to design and deliver incredible projects around the world by just being in an office location, right? Second thing is, the reason why we see very less women in this space is because many people who have come into the renewable energy have historically been in the broader energy sector and they've moved in. And
Oh,
for that, for those roles, being in what we call as core subjects, like core of electrical, core of mechanical, core of power electronics, core, being in the core is so important than being in just the periphery, right?
yeah.
So I think that's where, if you ask me, what can change with this industry, is it allows a much better working environment for women with core expertise, the subjects that I spoke about, but to be able to deliver greater impact in this space, right? So that's definitely one part of it. The other part of it is, because it's such a new, young industry, it's sunrise. The future of our world depends on how well we do as the human race in building a sustainable future. And for that, renewable energy plays such a key role. So we actually need more women to come into this and solve for this. Right? So that sustainable future is only possible if diverse thoughts and perspectives come into solving for these problems. Right? So my invitation to folks is that, the barrier to entering into this industry is far lesser, and second, the opportunities to impact the future is far higher. All you need is to just hone in on your core experience and expertise and make it happen.
Super. Excellently, beautifully put. Thank you so much. And ladies, I hope you're listening to what Dhanya Rajeswaran, Global Vice President and Country Managing Director, Fluence, is kind of, she's just laying out the red carpet there for you. And she's inviting you to apply, especially those of you who are in the core domain spaces. Renewable energy is for you, and you will find that, this industry has a lot more to offer with your skills, and it also gives you the flexibility and all of the other things that you probably missed in your old economy space. So that's great. Danya, we always knew, and when I say we, I'm talking about all of us at Avatar who has interacted with you, who has worked with you. We always knew that you're cut out for great stuff. And, all the work that we have partnered together with you, even when you were with Accenture, those were breakthrough solutions. Those were solutions where you were so invested in making a difference. What is the biggest change that you see when you moved from HR to a business role that you're currently occupying?
So this transition has been a very interesting and maybe even an unexpected one for me, right? Interesting because I think for the first time in my career, I'm actually seeing through the lens, truly seeing through the lens of what does it mean to run a business? What does profitability really mean? How do you actually make sustainable growth, etc. Right? So from that standpoint, I think the perspective that you would have as a functional expert versus a business leader, I think is probably the biggest difference. To me, if I just take a step back and talk a little bit about this transition, right? How did this transition even come about? So when I joined Fluence, it's now been more than 2.5 years, almost three coming up. And in these 3 years, you obviously know this. I don't come from the industry. I'm from, many different industries, but certainly not the renewable energy sort
Yeah.
of space. So when I came into this, my biggest driver was to actually learn everything possible to actually make sense of what is this industry, what is it that we do here, how do we serve our customers around the world, and what can make us do better to fulfill our mission of transforming the way we power the world. That's Fluence's mission, right? In that journey, I think I really dived deep. I dived deep. I stopped looking at things through the lens of my profession, which at that point was human resources, right? And I just widened the lens and I just dived in and immersed myself. As a result, a lot of time was spent with the project teams, being on site, understanding the site level issues, as well as talking to the sales teams and understanding our customers and so on and so forth. So, none of this was planned with the intention of, oh, this will come handy if I want to change a role. But all of this was intentionally done because I just wanted to equip myself. One fine day, when the decision to grow India as a country came about, that's when the opportunity was offered to me to say, hey, we'd like for you to, take this responsibility. And I was like, wow, okay. So I had to, first understand what this transition meant inside my head. It meant that I have to see things differently from how I used to see things before. It also meant that I had to be a little bit more courageous about getting into a space that I have never done. Like I've worked with leaders who have sat in these positions and I've seen them from outside, but that's I don't think it works like that, right? It's very different when you're sitting inside the role and working. So I think it's taken a little bit of courage, and it's also taken a lot of resilience and grit to just deal with all the things that come your way on a day to day basis. Because those are the challenges of any leadership role, right? So I think from that lens, it's been an incredible journey. I am so, so, so thankful to the leaders who saw that, you know, even though I was not from the industry, I could actually be trusted with this. And I'm deeply grateful for that trust.
Oh, that's just so gorgeous and so beautifully articulated, Danya. I'm just imagining the kind of learning curve that it would have been, steep like that, and every day a new day. But I think the message that you really shared right now is so powerful, and I really hope all our viewers are able to pick that up and really reflect on it and allow it to sink in, which is that when you begin doing something by wanting to be a true expert, a true contributor, and you just begin with the beginner's mind and you start learning, then I think you're exuding a kind of intentionality, a kind of commitment that immediately the ecosystem and your leaders and the world really picks up. And I think it rewards you with opportunities where that level of commitment or that level of learning is actually rewarded, is paid back multifold. if you were to put it that way. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Dani. And also the vulnerability with which you said, I didn't know, I was an outsider and I had to learn everything. I wanted to make meaningful contributions to the people. And that's really how I, did it. It was great listening to you. Anya, you are an out and out Chennai girl. You did your college in Ethiraj, you did your post graduation at Loyola, but you have forever worked outside of Chennai. You worked everywhere. I know all the places that you worked in. And so I wanted to ask you, is there any Chennai still left
A
in you?
lot of Chennai is very much left. I am who I am because of my upbringing. So no, definitely Chennai is. I love Chennai, and there's so much I look forward to when I go back home. So yes.
Yeah, great. And Chennai is mom. And, whenever I think of her and the fact that she's someone that really, really managed to do some amazing stuff. I mean, doing your PhD when you're past 60 and all is the stuff of absolute badassery, I would say. So she's the kind of, that's the kind of person she is. So, I mean, it's a no brainer that you're terribly, terribly inspired by her, right? But can you tell us what it meant to grow up, under your mom's care, and what kind of influence did she have? And was it in the small things or the big things? A little bit
No,
about your growing up.
you're so right. My mom has shown us the art of possible. If there's one thing that she's taught all of us, I'm the eldest of three daughters, but my mom is such a huge inspirational person in not just our lives, but in the entire family, right? Like people just
Yeah.
look up to her, and of course, the contributions she's made as a professor is phenomenal. But some of the things I recall, even as a child, my mom would always be like, "Go figure it out." Because sometimes as a child you'll come back and say, I don't know how to do this, or this person is saying this to me, and every single time my mom has always said, I'm sure you can handle it. Go fix it or go figure
Wow.
it, right? I think one of the biggest gifts she's given me is confidence. Confidence and the belief that, even as a child, that you're capable of figuring things out, you're capable of managing things, which I think is phenomenal. Because if there's one thing you need in this world to manage the day to day, I think it's really that. The other thing that I believe that my mom has held a very high bar for us is she's a constant learner, like constant. She's so curious about things. She reads a lot and she'll have a point of view on many things. And, even now in the renewable energy story, she keeps sending me articles. Hey, did you read this? Are you guys trying this out?
Oh, wow.
So that's her. Like, I think her curiosity and her lifelong learning is just phenomenal. And the third is she's somebody who's broken free in her own way from the boundaries of, what quote unquote a woman should be, right? It's possible, you can do this, and you don't have to be bound by any expectations of anybody else. All you have to do is just dream and go after it, right? So yeah, so huge, huge inspirational person in my life.
This is some other new level of respect now that I'm having for ma'am. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just incredible. I've interacted with her, but to keep all of what you're now saying in perspective is just simply amazing. And Danya, so it's very, very clear why, when you had to choose initiatives that you had to really focus on when you were leading DEI for Accenture or IND, as you used to, used to call it
You
at that
remember
time.
that, huh?
I remember that. Um, I remember that you said we have to focus on intentionality. And the number of sessions that we've done in intentional career pathing for the women at Accenture, especially the women of Vahini, if I remember. I want to ask you, Danya, um, this quality of intentionality which you really embody, that all of the things that you described, learning from role models, learning on the go, making sure that you don't take your current, this one for granted, always investing in your career, making sure that you're already kind of looking at what would be your next growth area. could be within the same company, same job, but how can I grow? How can I grow within this? Now, all of those are symbols and manifestations of intentionality. Now, as you know, Avatar runs Avatar Human Capital Trust, the not for profit organization, where we work with young girls and we teach them career intentionality. One of the things I want you to really share with us is what would you tell these young women? They can be girls just out of school and getting into college, or they can be young, early career women just coming out of college and entering into the workplace. What would you tell them? How would you, in your own words, express the importance of intentionality, career intentionality to them, Danya?
Yeah. No, that's a great question, Saundarya, because if there is one difference or one differentiating factor that will help someone accomplish their goals or not accomplish their goals, it is that intentionality, right? Just another example of my mother and her intentionality, right? So I told you she finished her MA BEd. She went on to do her MPhil, but she couldn't embark on the PhD journey because, three kids growing up, so much going on. But it's only when we settled down, she was like, now I'm going to do my PhD, which means she hadn't really given up her dream,
Oh,
right? So therefore the point I'm trying, and by the time she finished her PhD she was 69, right? And I remember telling her at one point, because doing a PhD is very hard, right? And I was telling her, why are you doing this, ma? Like, you don't have to struggle and suffer like this, big deal. And she said, it is a big deal to me. It's been my wish and dream that I will do a PhD, and I never had the time to do it. But the reason I'm saying this is life happens. There's many things that go on, but that intentionality of who do you want to be? What do you want to be? What do you want to accomplish? As long as we have clarity, right? And doesn't matter man or woman, as long as you have that clarity, you will figure out a way to get to that point. So many people talk about careers as, hey, I need a promotion, I need a, right? But before that promotion is just a validation. But actually, if you chase a promotion, this is the strangest thing, it never comes to you. Because if what you need to chase is, how am I growing? Like, is my growth as a professional tangible, right? One of the things that I've always done over the years is every year I would actually write my own resume. Now, I worked with Accenture for 14 years, so it doesn't mean that I was writing a resume with the only purpose of um, getting a
yeah.
job, right? And in my entire career of 25 years, I've probably worked like five companies, maybe. But the moment you write that resume, you know whether you have added new skills or new experiences and what do you need to do, right? So that's to me one way you can actually keep yourself honest with your own intentionality. Have clarity on what you want to do and work on yourself to just be ready to receive, right? And that's really where the heart of intentionality for me. And when we used to do the program together, the idea was to help our women understand that it's not somebody else's job to make you grow, it is our responsibility to be ready for
Wow.
growth, right? So it boils down to that, having clarity and having the ability to work on yourself.
This is just so good. I mean, everything was like an amazing, big, bright moment for me. And, when you spoke about your mom picking up that dream, she had put it in cold storage, she put it on the back burner. It had never died. And then at the opportune moment, she said, okay, I've delayed my gratification enough. Now I can pick it up and I will go ahead with it with all the energy that I can muster. I mean, big,
It's
big
amazing.
pranams to her for the this is the kind of role model we all wish to see. And I think, when especially young women who are caught up with so many challenges that they look at, you have a young kid who's growing up, you have elderly parents that you're taking care of, or you have a very tight deadline for that assignment that you have to finish at work, or you have to go grocery shopping, or you have to take care of the home and put the meals on the table for everyone. You kind of really think, I have so many goals and dreams, and is it all going to be possible? And I think, Mrs. Rajeswaran's story is the one that one can really think back and reflect on. And the fact that she held on to it, it was like this ember, always alive, never burning out. That was fantastic. And I loved the second point that you made. I mean, you made many points, but for me, the second point that stuck was the fact that nobody owes women any kind of growth or development pledges. Nobody has to do that. It's us who have to do it for ourselves. And so when we become intentional, we are actually really making that commitment to ourselves, so that tomorrow the future self of ours will actually look back and thank our younger avatar and say that, hey, thank you for not giving up. Thank you for staying the course, because today I am now country managing director. I am now a leader. I am now somebody that's really doing well. So I think this fact that women need to take on that mantle of powering through their own career is, I think, an amazing, amazing point that you made, Danya. Danya, I have one more question. After I heard about the whole aspect of delayed gratification and how you look at women investing in themselves as being the most important thing that they can do, I'm very intrigued to ask you this one question. And this is again because you were part of the leaders and professionals in India who really made meaning of the term inclusion and diversity for a whole lot of organizations. When you think of inclusion and gender inclusion, because that's like our favorite pet topic, what do you think organizations can do to actually have more women in the workplace? And more importantly, for the women to feel included. What do you think organizations should do, Danya?
Yeah, no, I think that's such a wonderful question because over the last several years, almost a decade and a half, many organizations have now made a few things like table stakes. Like, everybody has a consistent maternity leave policy. Everybody has certain guidelines into how you enable flexibility for women and so on and so forth. So many of those have become like part of any good organization that wants to attract talent. They have all of that in place, right? Like, for example, at Fluence, one is the intention to recruit more women. So while the industry is at 11%, we are at 20 is not a wonderful number on its own, but then in comparison to the industry, it feels like a lot. But it has taken some intention to get to that, right? And likewise, whether the policies around maternity, adoption, or for that matter, the paternity leave, I think we probably will be one of the very few organizations that has a 14-week paternity leave, right?
Super.
And likewise, enabling flexibility at the work. So policy level work has, I think, gained a lot of acceptance with organizations.
Super.
What needs to be done is at a cultural level. And cultural level, while unconscious bias trainings and men as allies to enable a more inclusive workplace, all of that is happening. But I think the culture work has to now get a little bit deeper to the extent of doing at micro team levels. That would be one of the areas that I feel like, because each team may have a different environment, because not everybody is in the same place with the understanding of diversity. So while organizations today very successfully do unconscious bias trainings for everybody, but maybe we need to do like at a micro level within a team. What is the team culture? Is it a culture that enables everybody's voice to be heard? Is it a culture where everybody feels like they can contribute and their opinions matter? And is it a team where people are consciously looking at positioning all performers irrespective of gender to be able to take on additional responsibilities and showcase their contributions, right? So I feel like from the macro we need to now get to the micro of how every every team leader is equipped to build a high performing team that is inclusive.
Super, super. Very, very nicely explained, Danya. So I have one more question before we move to the final segment of this, this podcast, this exchange, this interview. Danya, your career, in fact, I remember one of our conversations. And I remember, Danya, that we spoke about the fact that for women, the challenges are multifold. And in a country like India, where the acceptance of women in the workplace, of women leaders, of women taking breaks and coming back into the workplace, how those are so different for different kinds of people. So it's like there is this big intersectionality of challenges. What do you think has been the biggest hurdle in your career, and how have you overcome that?
I would say that if you're really keen on your career, then please be very careful who you marry. Choose right and make sure that your values are aligned very well. So I'll say that out front. But if you were to personally ask me, what has been my biggest hurdle? I think sometimes your own success comes in your own way because it lulls you into a comfort zone that, uh, you're doing so well, everything is great, you know everybody, everybody knows you, you're solving problems, it's all cool. But then you have to ask yourself, am I being lulled into a sense of comfort? Or is this really what I want to do? Right. And I've had that moment in my life when I had to get out literally of my own way and make some hard decisions about changing my roles or changing my jobs just because it felt too comfortable. And that to me, so for me, if you ever ask me, and if I ever feel very comfortable in something, that's a big indicator that I'm building a hurdle for myself. So that's definitely an area I would ask all of us to watch out for because, especially as women, when we set a certain infrastructure around us and we have a great boss, we have a great role, everything is going fine. Yes, so what if, I'm not doing newer things, but I'm able to do some things better? While that works, you shouldn't let it work for too long because very soon you'll find that you are nearing an area where you may not be able to come out of unless you do a much harder push. So, yeah, that's the way I view it.
Super, super. As you were speaking, I was imagining this quote: complacency is just one step away from a crisis. So don't be complacent. If everything is going fine, then, are you really even existing to the best of your potential, to the highest of your potential? I think that was a fabulous description of what a typical hurdle could be. Thank you, Danya. Now we move to the final segment, the rapid fire round. So I want to ask you some questions really quickly and your top of mind answer for those. If you could have one magical skill, if you could do magic, what would you use that magic for?
To break down walls. I would use that magic to break down walls because the more boundaryless we are, the better the world just gets.
That's gorgeous. That's beautiful. What's your all-time favorite movie?
Well, a lot of movies, but see, this is where my Chennai gene comes in, right? I absolutely love Rajnikant movies.
Fantastic. One thing you wish you knew before you were 18.
I think you know it, at least, like, people tell you life is not easy, life is a lot of hard work. People tell you, but then at 18, you really think, yeah, come on, big deal. That's your life, not mine. Mine's going to be cool. Mine's going to be easy. But I really wish that if at 18, I had understood even more the value of doing some things early on in your career, I would have, you know, on hindsight, thinking maybe I'd have done some things differently, right?
Audiobooks or print books?
Print books, always. I love reading books.
Great, super. One app that you cannot live without.
So I am mostly app free. Like it, I do, I, yeah, so mostly app free. I do not have any app unless I must have that app.
Wow.
Um, like even the
No
digital
Swiggy,
payments, it's
no
only the,
Zomato, no
yeah,
Facebook.
only,
Seriously. Oh my God, do you
recent,
even
I,
exist?
very recently, I finally installed Google Pay. because it was just getting impossible to work with physical cash. But
And that,
yes,
by the way, is called GPay, not Google Pay. You don't even know the right name for that.
but that's me. I mean, I'm not a big fan of apps.
Oh, wow. This is something I would never, ever have guessed about you, Danya.
Yeah.
And you know what? This kind of brings us to a close of this amazing, amazing conversation that we had with you. And, all I can say is, Danya, more power to you. Here's wishing that you do even more amazingly in your life and in your career. And, you are this amazing giver. I've known you to be that person for many years now. So here's wishing that you get many, many opportunities to speak, to share your wisdom the way you just did on the conversations with the career doctor. And here's wishing that you are a lighthouse for many, many thousands of women. Thank you so much for being on this show, Danya.
Saundarya, thank you. I really appreciate you doing all of this great work that you've been doing for the last 25 years. And I'm really thankful that, you've blazed a huge trail for a lot of us, and so many thousands of women today will be so grateful for the deep work that you have done in the space of creating second careers in particular. So really appreciate the opportunity to, call you my friend, and then to be able to contribute to such an important topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Danya. People, wasn't that like a incredible conversation? I mean, I'm just going to, watch it on loop for some time for sure, because there was so much of authenticity in it, so much of real, on ground lived experience of a woman leader, who's truly owning the C suit, as you can see. So, hope you enjoyed this conversation. And here's wishing you a fortified career with lots of moments of discovery and delight. Thank you. Until next time, bye.